This is the final part of my series on Dante Ting failing. I know my viewers are probably tired of seeing videos about Dante Ting. I stopped making responses to JP Holding because I addressed everything he had to say in my second video response to him. But I think Holding backs Dante's arguments, so you can consider this a fail on his part as well. In this series I've refuted a collection of incredibly bizarre claims. I've not taken anything out of context. What you've seen here is the best that Theology Web can do. I said I was going to debunk every claim Dante has ever made, and I'm sticking to that. I ran out of material from Dante's disaster on Theology Web, so in this video I'm going to be responding to YouTube comments. There are two things I'm going to address in this video: Dante's misunderstanding of non-belief, and the instances in which Dante has contradicted himself or simply misunderstood DDV and IDV. Before I begin, I want to clarify that this video is not about the proper definition of atheism. It doesn't matter to me if you disagree with this definition. I prefer the term negative atheist to avoid confusion anyway. Dante Ting did not argue about this. Rather, he objected to the notion that non-belief or lack of belief in a proposition is distinct from asserting that a proposition is false. For example, he claims that not believing in God is equivalent to believing that God does not exist. I have an analogy which easily corrects this misconception. I understand that other atheists have developed accurate and correct ways of explaining this, but these are usually not very convincing to theists. Let's imagine that you were asked a question and you have two answer choices to choose from, A and B. Let's also assume that you don't have the slightest clue as to which of these is the correct answer. Should you believe that the answer is A? No, of course not. You have no reason to. So does that mean you must believe the answer is not A? Well, no, you have no reason to believe that either. The problem is exposed immediately because, according to Dante, you do believe the answer is not A. Now, it's quite strange that you've managed to rule out A, especially considering that you could have applied this same reasoning and ruled out B instead. Furthermore, unless you don't trust me that one of these answers is correct, an assertion that A is false would mean that B is true. So if you're confident that this is a fair question, shouldn't you answer that B is true? Think about it. Had we ruled out B first, you would now be claiming that A is true. These are contradictory answers, but they can both be arrived at just as easily. Obviously, you should lack belief in both answers. However, Dante says that a lack of belief is the same as an allegation of falsity. This means that every time you are faced with a question like this, in which you have no idea what the answer is, the correct thing is to say that all the choices you've been given are simply wrong. This is ridiculous. Non-belief in A or B does not entail the belief that A or B is untrue. Also, non-belief in the statement, "I don't know," are not mutually exclusive. Saying "I don't know" simply means I lack knowledge. That doesn't mean I can't also lack belief. Dante thinks that non-belief comes with more of a commitment, but this is absurd. It is the absence of a commitment. Dante Ting's position on this is more or less the same as shock of gods. But clearly, this is only argued by fundy theists. I knew it wouldn't be hard for me to find a more reasonable theist who disagrees with this. So, who did I pick? William Lane Craig. Yes, Dante's intellectual hero quite blatantly disagrees with him. Let's see what Craig has to say. Your atheist friends are right that there is an important logical difference between believing that there is no God and not believing that there is a God. Compare my saying, "I believe that there is no gold on Mars," with my saying, "I do not believe that there is gold on Mars." If I have no opinion on the matter, then I do not believe that there is gold on Mars, and I do not believe that there is no gold on Mars. There's a difference between saying, "I do not believe P," and "I believe not P." Logically, where you place the negation makes a world of difference. Now that Craig and I have successfully stomped Dante into oblivion, I'm going to read some of Dante's comments in an idiotic voice. For some extra fun, let's imagine that Dante's comments are addressed to William Lane Craig.
I do not believe in free will. equals believing that free will does not exist. And yes, I am familiar with the sort of nonsensical cement that the likes of you love to play around with. Also, you are not making sense. If you do not believe in free will, then you are, by definition, a determinist. Specifically, you are a hard determinist. I'm getting this from real life linguistics. I don't know is consistent with having a non-committal view on the existence of chupacabras. Are you saying that if you do not believe in God's existence, you may also not believe in God's non-existence? No, this is inconsistent. If people say they don't believe in chupacabras, it is the same as claiming that chupacabras do not exist. How difficult is it for you to understand this? In order for you to claim to not believe in something, you must first deny it.
Alright, on to point 2. Dante explicitly states his position is IDV. However, in his other statements he has contradicted this numerous times. For example, Dante said he chose to believe that he was abducted by aliens. According to IDV, this would have to mean some research or evaluation which he chose to involve himself in led him to this belief. But that was not the case at all. Now, let's have a look at what Dante says about choosing disbelief. This next quote is hilarious, so I'm going to read it aloud. It's not about one position making sense or not. It's about believing in one position and then choosing to believe against it, just because. Just because. So, which of these positions does Dante seem to be talking about? Does it sound like he thinks there are intermediate steps in which one has to discover persuasive factors? No, not even close. Dante also says that he could choose to be an atheist. This is problematic because he claims to have already evaluated the evidence and came to believe in God. In fact, Dante says that anyone who is even moderately intelligent should believe in God. So how does Dante intend on finding reasons which convince him otherwise? He doesn't. He thinks he could choose to disbelieve just because. Next, he plainly states that people can choose to be convinced that a belief is true. Again, this sounds nothing like IDV and exactly like DDV. Finally, Dante says IDV allows for one to choose whether or not to accept evidence. Now, why isn't this consistent with IDV? Because choosing to accept evidence is choosing a belief in itself. It is seriously that easy to refute Dante's claim. Accepting evidence is accepting the belief that the evidence is acceptable. In other words, acceptance of evidence is nothing if not the belief that it supports a certain proposition. According to IDV, we are only able to choose intermediate actions leading up to a belief, like whether or not to seek out evidence. Choosing whether or not to accept evidence would be directly choosing a belief. There, that's 5 contradictions. It's awfully ironic that Dante says I've ignored basic logic. There's one more thing I'd like to add. In the debate, I've taken the position of indirect doxastic voluntarism and argued against direct doxastic voluntarism. As you can see, my position in the debate was IDV. I even stated early on that my position would not be contradicted by indirectly chosen beliefs which relied on intermediate factors. So if Dante's position is IDV, why in the world has Dante been arguing with me this whole time? Because he has no idea what he's talking about. It's hard to take a person seriously when he doesn't even understand the words he is using. In conclusion, Dante Ting has absolutely failed to argue anything. Some of his responses to my argument are so unpredictably bad that I may never see them again. But these videos do at least serve to expose theology web for the crack house that it is.
You're working too hard.